Dear esteemed participants, hi, welcome to ICLAD 2021. With a great opportunity, we would like to extend our immense appreciation to ICLAD committee for shortlisted this topic to be presented as part of the ICLAD proceeding. We hope that the topic will bring to us a greater insight and knowledgeable resource for future reference. The topic will be presented today entitled Converging Behavioral Technology Paradigm Towards Harnessing Productivity, a theoretical nuances on industrial forward human capital development strategy and competency design. Concepts of future of work propagates strong elementary on technology adoption that hypothetically form the state of organizational capabilities forward. The revolution of advanced technology will predominantly shape a symbiotic integration in moderating organizational process as a mechanism for productivity, structuring involving the human capabilities, competencies, and performance measures. The concepts of future of works propagates strong elementary on technology adoption that hypothetically reform the state of organizational capabilities forward. The revolution of advanced technology will predominantly shape a symbiotic integration in moderating organizational process as a mechanism for productivity structuration involving human capabilities, competencies, and performance measures. This research intended to assess the dynamics of the perceived value relevance on the impact of the Industrial Revolution towards human behavior in undertaking technology evolution and assimilating to the impact based on its major leaps. At the lens of technology implication, the human skills will be replaced and the state of productivity will be redefined to embrace technological adoption as a key determinant for the productivity measures. In outweighing the effects of the changes, human competencies shall align and synthesize the new technology development by enabling human-technology interaction, managing the future labor, underpinning the technological impact and trend. The evolutionary intervention on technological change conferred a significant impact towards occupational development in labor market, whereby 67.8% of the organization that embarks on the technology adoption has decided to relinquish their non-productive process managing the business ROI. This impliedly has invalidated the human skills and contribution to support the organizational productivity as the technology has surpassed the capabilities of the people in managing the operational functions. The reduction of supports due to the technological impact has depicted a negative proponent that technology does not correlate to strengthen the labor market. This will result towards an undefined behavior for technology adoption. In most situations, the organizations are much more focusing on technology developments instead of the people competencies and process to support the technology implementation. The research objectively intended to undertake a systematic review based on the extrapolated dimensions dealt with the impact of the behavioral technology on IR forward towards human capital strategy development and competency design. On the second part, it is purposely defined to conjecture a theoretical modeling on IR forward within the dynamics in correlating the competency development and HR strategy development design. In demystifying the misconception in the IR 4.0 impact towards generalizability, The behavioral technology has perceived correlation towards industrial technology maturity with emphasis on the socioeconomic multitude to manage the overarching globalization impact of the industrialized nations. The technological assimilation will encode the manual transaction or activities through a technological intervention. Notwithstanding, the competency development strategies was ousted from the IR 4.0 parameters within the dynamics of technology which interchangeably impaired the development and the behavioral change in line with the technology moderation. This is due to the lack of behavioral exemplar that able to demonstrate the actual requirement of the technology competency in composing the capabilities bench strength. Accelerating the behavioral technology acculturation process, the organization shall evaluate the reliability of the IR 4.0 transformation strategy in line with the competency design to ramp up its change length. Hence, in redesigning the interoperability of the IR 4.0, the organization is proposed to undertake in-depth assessment on the behavioral adaptation and skills reform in managing the technology performance. The hybrid configuration of behavioral technology posits unconditional development which contemporaneously sustain the technology development's dynamics, encompassing the trend which inherent progress, autonomous change, and innovation of this path dependence. The technological impetus might condense towards a quasi-evolutionary characteristics which extrapolate rule interdependence to embed evolutionary change to the technology in delivering productivity. The current trend and analysis of the IR forward evolvement has reinvigorated the development of human resource strategy to propagate a synchronization on technology prospect in human capabilities for prospering role modeling. The behavioral technology has a strong influence to elicit normative improvements in enabling automation in digitalization process, factoring adaptability of infrastructures and technology transfer. Those conditions would govern the contextual development of the technology capabilities and its application, codifying the knowledge of the technology. The complex embodiment of the technological artifacts significantly encumbered the regeneration of the processual frame to cultivate the strategic competencies and capabilities in nurturing the IR forward talent development. The intensification of the technology advancement has reformed the behavioral dimensions and characteristics of the institutionalized capabilities to encode horizontal and vertical performance in elevating the productivity stance. The interaction between technology elements and the organizational behavior has synthesized the occupational environment that has a dominant effect towards the technology advantage. In all, the technology has developed a new competency model that modifies a behavioral dimension adapting to the new change. The emergence of IR-forward technology would change the dynamics of human resource development practices, which cognitively formulate an introspective behavioral interconnectedness to stimulate technology transformationalism. The IR 4.0 occupational standard shall promulgate a collaborative intelligence on multidimensional relationship inherent to the competency development, envisioning the dynamics of its orientation. The existential preparedness on the organizational planning adopting the IR 4.0 implementation is predominantly interdependent with the future technology development archetypes in stewarding an asymptotic equilibrium to ensure it is compatible to the technology design. The operational effectiveness adapting to the new technology is conservatively reformed, accommodating the pace of unprecedented technology benchmark. This would cause gradual intervention development based on the overarching technology dynamics. Critical phases of the technology development shall consider competency requirement in ensuring the capabilities could be synthesized as a key value driving interfacing the digital transformation. The technological implication may reform the level of competencies linked to the organizational performance requirement as a reference. Demystifying the myth of the technology drivers, the issues of technology capitalism has resonantly implicates, in material particular, the role of human resource in managing its survival. This hypothetically postulates that technology will replace human capabilities. Skimming the relationship of the behavioral technology as the counterintuitive concept due to the technology approach and its subjectivity, the concept of the behavioral technology has propagated an adverse conception that might lead towards the human collaborative realism. The heterogeneity of the behavioral technology comprehensively discussed as a sociological tender to influence the cognitive aspects of human behavior towards technology modernization. This depicts the convergence of a psychological value and technology persona reinforcing the human action. The context of the control and response is highly interdependent to the motives and legitimate intent on how the technology play an important role in managing and controlling the human action. Assessing the magnitude of HR strategy design in determining the behavioral technological implication, there were debatable arguments in measuring the extent of composition of the behavioral technology based on the aggregated dimensions and polemics. Such measurement is hardly to be distinguished by its form as there is a decentralized subset of behavioral technology relations within the context of IR forward through human technology standpoint. The exposition of the behavioral technology has integrated the principles that descriptively concentrate on the cause of action that impact the way how the technology been applied. Consequently, this may constitute a diffusion towards a non-bilateral impact that transmit as the tactics of performing the technology which dominantly authorize the controlling competency behavior. The magnitude of the behavioral technology is highly generated by an explicit conditions that elevate the human competencies and capabilities moderating towards design productivity. The typology of the behavior might postulate an inference that it emerged significantly to install propagative influence to confine the action to the extent that it rules the cognitive behavioral adaptation in delivering performance. By virtue of the technology acceptance model, the institutionalization of the behavioral technology seems to connote a perceived realism that underneath comparative perspective, which may derelegate the capabilities. The domineering effects from the behavioral technology is an esoteric result of the generalized consensual reality that seated in the social phenomenon. The terrain of the behavioral technology entails the constructive ability of the groups or individual to be adaptive to the technology development through its normative order. The interpretation of the behavioral technology shall be characterized by cognitive analytics, the conjecture and objective behavioral modeling through technology baseline of the moderated competency requirement. Although the technology may accelerate the human productivity and performance, it is critical to determine the value creation and impact of the technology intervention comprehensively vis-a-vis integrating the human performance. Behavioral technology enlightened as an intrinsic value that exists in moderating the performance issues and implications. Applying the concept of behavioral technology, it mitigates an independent perspective, how the organization remodel their interconnection between the concepts of competency, productivity, and performance, which contingent to the occupational development which compatibly impact the human resource strategy framework. Although the technology may accelerate the human productivity and performance, it is critical to determine the value creation and impact of the technology intervention comprehensively vis-a-vis integrating the human performance. Behavioral technology enlightened as an intrinsic value that exists in moderating the performance issues and implications. Applying the concept of behavioral technology, it mitigates an independent perspective, how the organization remodel their interconnection between the concepts of competency, productivity, and performance, which contingent to the occupational development which compatibly impact the human resource strategy framework. Emboldening by challenges of the human capital strategy during the IR forward, the behavioral technology has formed a reputational influence that revitalized the multifaceted dimension of the open technology practice and norms. The classical approach of the social technology jurisprudence has been theorized as part of comparator in remodeling the technology application based on its plurality of the technology norms. The value of the theoretical principles conveyed a redefined conception of the behavioral technology to form a competitive productivity outcomes that dichotomously structured within the autonomy and interdependence of social reality which characterize and govern the technology implementation. Hence, a structured technology development process has to be performed and assessed by streamlining the integration of the technology performance with human capabilities. This is to ensure that the performance evaluation methodology stands relevant and comprehensively distinct the value vice versa. Such technology control need to be undertaken to ensure consistent application in designing the technology performance plan based on the approved organizational strategy. In principles, performance management should govern the technology organization to improve the productivity. The context of the performance management shall be observed as an interplay to improve the human performance and productivity, vice versa. Technology performance is often defined as a multidimensional construct that substantially underscores a comparative evaluation. Technology development is placed on various dimensions between human resource and innovation. Thus, training can be seen to be a key action plan in developing a competitive advantage. The limitation of this research is studied only on the operational dimension performance and not as the whole performance management set. Hitherto, in managing the new methodological reform, further emphasis shall be given on the semantic integration between the governance model in restructuring the behavioral technology capabilities to unlock a greater evaluation on the technology dynamics. The context shall address wider issues covering long-term behavioral technology viability, technology interventions, and in particular on the governance transparency on the technology. This is to scrutinize the application of the technology intelligence to underpin reliability on operational strategy competitiveness. In commissioning the implementation, the productivity indicator has to be measured in accordance to the behavioral technology indicator. The technology advancement can liberalize the operational performance strategy by calibrating the importance and existence of the performance mapped to the design technology therewith. Under the strategic behavioral technology management, the technology is expected to reinforce human action to deliver a tangible outcome. Within the context of human technology application, the organization shall define the magnitude of the performance management based on the defined process, substituting to the organizational performance analysis. Technology performance shall classify to focus on human competencies interfacing the performance management. Throughout the discussion, we can feel that the overstature of the digitalization age has contemporaneously positioned the organizational strategic priority in deploying the technology adoption in culminating non-productive measures to ensure the productivity can be ramped up. Digital leadership navigates transformation in transcending the organizational process and capabilities to remodel integration toward the digital application and process, molding efficiency and operational sustainability. The efficacy of the intervention is depending on the process and technology integration, besides the competency to map the operational optimization with a strong digital enablement. The organization of the system, process, and data would enhance the dynamics of the technology utilization efforts in supporting the overarching process and organizational requirement. The integration of the technology capabilities has a strong impact in stewarding organizational transformation to advance technology adoptions for organizational sustainability. Ensuring the IR forward could deliver its significant momentum towards organizational performance, it is pivotal to advocate the importance of technology in scrutinizing the business performance through internal and external assessment. All organizations shall mitigate the reliability on the technology development, particularly with regards to information pertaining to the technology acquisition. It is important to outweigh the technology application and value based on the level of competitiveness. The technology performance indicator has to be evaluated to provide absolute manifestation on the productivity assessment, which contemplates heuristic evaluation on organizational infrastructures and capability. In the absence of the evaluation, the human resource strategy would consequently uncertain in quantifying the human role to support the organizational requirement, which resulted towards an undue competition between labor market regulated by internal and external conditions. This would cause diminishing impact to the development of the HR strategies mapped to the competencies development plan. The disposition of technology in modeling improvement would essentially enhance the dynamics of the human performance through its competitive moderation, correlating the effects of the technology characteristics. The convergence of technology and human capability shall empirically in sync to technology attributes bearing the technology impacts and readiness, and IR forward indicator. The technology design would predominantly define the formulation on competency development which align to the organizational strategy. This will embrace a positive alignment to the human strategy plan governing the business performance. Notwithstanding, it was observed that due to the heterogeneity in the technology segmentation and its indeterminate forecast, it resulted from subjugating the IR forward determinants, which the technology seems to highlight unconditional treatment which preponderantly anecdotal to the plot of the organizational information. This indirectly have impaired the technology capability management implementation. Thus, by analyzing its co-relevance, it postulates that technology may have a direct influence towards human capability and potentially be referred as a core determinant to control the technology performance overall. Under the constructivist philosophy, the research undertake a critical observation towards the subject area in modeling the explanation based on the causal effect and have been the main driver in obtaining the output. The research will address the interpretive continuum of the controlling subject through a complex interpretation that leads towards the technology, human resource strategy, and competency development perspective. Pragmatically, the research methodology design is qualitatively to be experimented. In extracting the dimensions of the theoretical conceptions, this research is conjectured through an inductive reasoning based on sequence of the subjective reform of the hypothetical proposition. In ensuring the context of the hypothetical development is managed within the parameter, the focus of the research will concentrate on the implication of the study to depict the realism in addressing the underpinning philosophy. Outweighing the research process, a distinctive evaluation has been undertaken to calibrate the findings with the positivist view that featured an elaborated explanation in synthesizing new perspective. This process is important in evaluating the comparative insight of the hypothetical development based on the subject. In discovering the relationship between the hypothetical construct and the positivism paradigm, there is a need to structure the related perspective into state of conceptual knowledge to illustrate the application through its operative sense. Such action can only be rationalized via hypothetical study, which is best to be explored through a qualitative means. Within the context of technology development research, the research would underpin the theoretical importance of observing the logic rationale of human resource strategy design methods through empirical evaluation in explaining the hypothetical assumption based on its inductive reasoning. The methodological concept has supported the technology development notion, whereby it stated that in delivering more constructive investigation of the phenomena in the context of IR forward, it would be highly relevant in examining knowledge through generalization of facts based on the theoretical abstraction. The research would empirically identify the reality of the technology behavior linked to the research context. In managing the grounded theory applications for thematic modeling of the implications of human behavior development, the study is to be designed in two stages. The first stage is to content analyze the secondary data based on the publication related to the IR forward. The selection of the cases will be determined based on its relevance for the past 5 years. The information obtained through the secondary data will be reviewed with a special reference to ascertain the hypothetical construct of technology implementation and its impact towards human capital development. The data will be analyzed to identify the integral factors underpinning the concepts of behavioral technology. The information thematically propagates a descriptive construct based on the research categories to generate the observable correlation based on the cause and effect. The data will be then characterized to form an interplay between the sets of variables which will be explored using an empirical methodology. The approach will be used to establish the rationale as part of the process in developing logics of the hypothesis design based on the identified variable. In reference to the above, in-depth literature assessment will be applied part of the methodological descriptions where the domain of the finding will be further discussed and explained to substantiate the empirical observation based on the selected literature review. In measuring the relativity of contacts, the two assessment procedures will be used. One would be to ascertain the impact of IR forward towards the human capital development strategy and competency development. And second part is to infer the technology development impact based on the related dimension. In defining the qualities of the case and the relationship of the variable, further triangulation tests towards the propositions based on its sub-variables is applied in rationalizing the above segment. The hypothesis to be mapped to the factors outlined through an inductive reasoning. This objectively to identify the relativity of the hypothesis based on the defined context and terminology to exert rationale of the findings. Based on its epistemology tense, the context of the research will be further analyzed, the variants that occur in establishing the grounded theoretical nuances for the study, the advanced analysis to be undertaken to form the reliability of the qualitative process. Based on the hypothetical encapsulation, there are three main drivers that surrounding the elements of IR forward. The first is the digital leaderships. The digital leadership paradigms have been used to guide the research. It investigates the suitability of each in resolving the research behavior and ultimately to select the type of the behavioral paradigm in moving the impact of the technology. The second dimension is on the technology capability development. This is for the purpose of outweighing the integration between the IR forward technology application towards the strategic and its operational implementation. The conceptual distinction between the IR forward approaches in human resource strategy development would characterize an operational modeling to enable the decentralized operational management through the technology change. The third construct is underpinning the element of performance matrices. The element of performance has been used to strengthen the technology adoption principles in managing the productivity, assessing the dynamics of the IR forward technology approaches towards organizational development interventions, The magnitude of the performance matrices has defined the importance of the logics of the operational process to substitute the element of measures and inventory towards managing the impact analysis. This is where concurrence to inflect the concept of performance as a baseline methodology and a parameter in profiling the impact of the technology application. In examining the context of the content analysis, the controlling parameters has been further reduced to set the preliminary limits towards the hypothetical development. The distillation of the principle is analytically transcribed based on the following constructs. In examining the context of the content analysis, the controlling parameters has been further reduced to set the preliminary limits towards the hypothetical development. The distillation of the principle is analytically transcribed based on the following constructs. In examining the first observable constructs depicted the element of agile culture. The concept of behavioral technology is materially emphasized within the context of socio-economic relations within the normative norms that specifically conceive from social democracy that increase authority via systematic approach towards task disruption. The concept imposed the essence of agile acculturation that concentrated relatively on the benefits application of the system towards the technology environment. The intrinsic application would innovate new organizational culture which characterize between the human elements and reflecting experience. Computing the value paradox of the technology establishment, it gives a legitimate expectations on the concepts of the productivity link towards human development and impact. Agile culture engendered an experimental view on interrelation of the causal sociological models with potential confounding influence on the patterns of change and innovation implication implemented in generating results. The technology would accelerate positive correlation to human capabilities. The second dimension is on the work innovation. The work innovation has been viewed as the main component to the technology structure with specific reference to the occupational patterns. The context of institutionalized capability had been interpreted as the dimensional aspects of the technology to increase firm performance. Innovation impart organizational effectiveness in managing competency. The concepts of the organizational stratifications has reformed the capabilities in accelerating the productivity outcome based on the conformance measures. The work innovation is observed as a preconceived ideology within the traditional norms that operate parallel to improve the behavioral outcome. The concept of the work innovation can only be rationalized to specific industry by understanding the functional aspects of the occupational requirement mapped to the technology segments. In cognizance, it is instrumental that technology intelligence to be adopted as a primary indicator to assess the reliability of the technology conformance to form an actionable pattern of work productivity. Integrating the constructs of its general application, organizational automation has been identified as the main pillars to support the IR forward design. The organizational automation shall be distinguished between the context of one application of each technology into work process through a comparative assessment. The value dependent of the technology condensed within the legitimacy of a linear influence of the technology support which define the type of productivity measures. The overriding influence of technology is driven by the effective performance strategy, organizational structure, and mechanism which compose a value creation towards eliminating negative drawbacks. The technology modeling shall mitigate the plan in bearing operational sustainability. Technology need to be assessed to anticipate changes on the business process and operational archetype due to its generalizability. In any context when the technology capability has been prominent, the bearing of the technology shall prove the dynamics towards democratization in improving the productivity through re-engineering of the technology. The emergence of the new technology has precluded the concept of strategic determinism that works within the social force. Technology has a domineering impact and it develops social development through pragmatic behavior. There is a strong connectivity between the technology and social policy as the system is built up through an empirical association of capitalism and superstructures, which means towards the technology development. There might be a potential convergence in the progress of designing technology structure through its social policy as in transition of the technology towards democratic socialism, it will maximize the social force to upgrade the technology competency bearing the operational requirement. The concept has comprehensively construed an instrumental depository in quantifying the impact of the technology capitalism. The underlying propositions conjectured based on the literature review examine a strong correlation between the latent variables. This is to waive the relativity to test the direct relationship. The theoretical proposition has been construed to explore the level of the significance between the correlated variables in mediating the sequence to the proliferation of the design framework. The study to be further triangulated through a quantitative assessment. As part of the significance of the study, the research intended to signify the propositions. One is to bridge fundamental aspects of the social behavioral studies in the context of technology development. The proposition aims to formulate strategic HR framework in governing the IR forward model for organizational reference. Secondly, is to provide a specific theoretical proposition in regulating the HR strategic plan. This study shall be observed as a methodology to address the gaps of potential resolution in assessing technology implication managing humans' performance and productivity. As the conclusion, the competitive behavioral technology management shall give a material emphasis on the semantic integration between the governance models in restructuring behavioral technology capabilities to unlock green technology strategy. The context shall address wider issues covering long-term behavioral technology viability through technology acculturation. In particular, there must be a greater emphasis that technology disseminate the impact to underpin reliable operational competitiveness. In commissioning the implementation, the productivity indicator has to be measured in accordance to the real-time data. The technology advancement can liberalize the operational performance by calibrating the importance and existing performance capabilities mapped to the design technology. Under the strategic behavioral technology management research, the technology is expected to reinforce human actions to deliver tangible outcome. Within the context of technology application, the organization shall define the magnitude of the performance management based on the organizational information, substituting the performance measurement analysis. Technology performance management shall be classified to focus on human technology. In uplifting the organizational bench strength, robust technology interventions shall be applied to accelerate the organizational performance managing human capability interface. The IR Forward has positioned technology towards a greater manifestation in improvising the organizational strategy forward. Enabling future-ready organization, HR strategy shall constructively reform to align the technology modernization in building its competitive relevance.